welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Steel Division guide. This time, I'm going to make a guide about how to make a 1v1 deck specifically. And I'll make a guide in the future if you guys want about team games. But first, we're going to start with 1v1s because I feel like there's an audience for that and people are curious, and it's kind of hard as well. So I'm going to start with Infantry tab. I'm going to go through the 4 categories of different types of infantry and like what is necessary to bring and like you have to bring. And it's kind of standard through all the decks, Russians and Axis as well. So let's just begin. There's like 4 types of infantry types, I believe, in the game. You have your normal line infantry, which are your Panzer, Grenadiers, your Gavardi DP for the Russians, your riflemen for the Allies, just standard. These are just like your infantry that just fight at medium and long range. These are your standard guys. So you see your Panzer Grens, and you for sure want to bring one in A, B for sure every single time, and a C card supplement later down the road. The second type of infantry you're going to be having is your satchel charge units, or flamethrowers, stern pioneers, or the equivalency for the Russians and the Allies, engineers for the Allies, and Superior, I think, for the Comintern. And these are going to be your CQC being close quarter combat. These guys are great for these engagements. You're going to want to bring these in both A and B if you can. Ideally, these are what you need to do to win all the deep forest green cover areas. And the third category, I believe, is your cheap spam infantry. These will be your ersatz, whatever like disheartened infantry the Allies get. They get, I think, 6 Airborne gets like glider troops. And then, so on for the Russians. They get their own equivalency. Pretty cheap, like range about 15-20 points. And just a lot of them. No veterancy. And then the fourth category is obviously leaders. Can't go wrong with leaders. You can bring them different equipment, different stuff. They give veterancy to all your troops. And veterancy, I believe, gives like 15, 25 to 33% bonus depending on the veterancy. So like 15, I believe, is first one. Second, 25. I could be wrong on the numbers. Somebody should leave a comment, but it's around that. It makes a huge difference in combat. A 2-star unit versus a no-star unit will just destroy, and 1-star versus 2-star, big difference in combat. It's significant. One thing to know is this is my 20th Panzer. It's one of my favorite decks. You see me bringing my cheap infantry, my Panzer Grens as well in A. I bring in my Pioneer SVTs. So I like to 1-vet all of my infantry if I can. I don't 1-vet everything because, like, for example, this DP 20 points I use as a spam. I just want more stuff. But in general, though, you should definitely vet your equipment and units. Yeah, so like your infantry should all be vetted. Don't vet disheartened troops. I don't think it's worth it whatsoever. And now let's move into tanks. There are, I'd say, 3 categories, and then some exceptions. Let's say 3 categories of armored tanks. Okay, you get your light tanks, which are like Panzer 3s, Stuarts, things that are really light. Some of them are really OP. So, example, 20th gets the Panzer 3L, 40 points, an APCR round, 150 penetration. They're just absolutely disgusting. And to be relative, if you're completely new to the game, a Sherman costs about 80 points. And this thing is significantly better than the Sherman in close quarter combat with that APCR round, especially how it usually gun jams with APCR. APCR is just for players that don't know anything, an APCR round just has more penetration, but has less range, as you can see on here. Another thing to know is you have your medium tanks. Those are going to be your T-34s. I guess T-34s and Panzer IVs and Shermans. Those are going to be the 3 like main guys. You're going to want these. These are going to be your main line tanks. They're going to be everywhere. In a 1v1 especially. Every once in a while you'll see more heavy tanks, and I'm going to put the heavy tanks as T-34-85s, Panthers, Tigers, King Tigers, IS-2s, just because they're the price. It's just the price. Like a Panther is like 120, 130, T-30-45 is like 95 points, 85 points, pretty expensive stuff. Brutusson is an IS-2 right here is 200 points. These are going to be very rare in the battlefield. You do not want to bring these out because if you lose them, it's huge, and there's a lot of counters to them, so be wary of that. I do recommend, like infantry tab, you want to have a mix of everything, but I really want you want to side on the idea of having medium tanks and light tanks, because losing those, making mistakes with those, is way less costly. Another thing to note for medium tanks, this applies to Shermans and Panzer IVs. Not T-34s though. If so, let's just say A phase, you bring a tank, right? It's one vet. If zero vet, you get 5 tanks. You bring one vet, you only lose 1 tank. You double vet, you lose 3 tanks. So I recommend one vetting, and if you can, bring a leader. This deck doesn't have one, but other decks do. Same with Shermans, the same availability factors play in. So I recommend having one vetting on your tanks, because vetting your tanks is a huge deal, because it leads to who gets the first shot in, gets better penetration. It really leads to high performance. So that is something to be wary. You should bring that. So moving down the line though, and let's look at the support tab for now. I mean, let's just go over support tab. What do you bring in a support tab? I'd say there are 4 categories once again. Maybe, all right, let's do 5 categories. We'll do 5 categories. First of all, there's the rushing units. These are going to be your flamethrowers. There's going to be your flamethrowers or MG42s, depending on what nation you're playing. But these flamethrowers are going to be super key to getting into key positions. They're some of the fastest vehicles. They're just going to be in great areas. MG42s, once again, this is not a great example, but like decks like 17th SS come with tractions, a vehicle that is the fastest vehicle in the entire game, and it is so worth bringing these to rush down and get into certain locations. So these are your rush units, and MG42s are also like your lockdown units, locking down certain areas of the map. I really recommend them. Can't go wrong. Then there's like the supporting vehicles and support IG guns. Can't go wrong. There's just an assault gun versions of different things, grills, like different options here. For me, I recommend you're just going to have to play around with that. I think it's really up to the beholder of like what they want. You also get commanders in this tab. I recommend commanders because when you vet up your 1 vet infantry, so like let's say if you're completely new, you don't know how leaders work. So let's say your unit is 1 vet, right? You vet it. See here, he's already 1 vet, which you did in here. You have a leader next to him. There'll be a radius. He'll get his 2nd vet, and if you have a commander in the radius of the leader, you will then get a triple vet. And the range of a commander is, I believe, 1,500 to 2,000 meters. I think I'm kind of going off the top of my head. And then I believe for connecting leaders to other leaders, you can make like a spider chain on here, and that is like 1,000, 15. I think it's 1,000 meters to extend to the next leader. But yeah, so commanders really important. Another category of stuff you should bring in your support tab is ammo, and that will go tie in to artillery. But let's go look at AT tab. And this is the same for everybody. Everybody gets flamethrowers. All sides get them. The Russians and the Allies get their own equivalency of MGs. Germans have an advantage in this category. I believe a clear advantage. MG42s double vetted will just annihilate everybody. But the Americans, for example, and other nations get some howitzers. Russians get some different vehicles. There's some variety there, and sometimes there's even like full-on tanks in here. You'll see that a lot. Look out for those flamethrower tanks that you'll see in some of these decks. They say if they have a normal T-34 turret and everything, so they're just normal tanks or normal Churchill. So just look at that stuff too. AT wise, there is like a couple of varieties of AT, but in general there are like a couple categories. First of all, there's the infantry. Panzer are a must take, I do believe. I just don't bring it because of my composition, but these type of Panzer, what they do in a 1v1 for you is they effectively make your opponent have to play super passive with their armor vehicles because they're nervous of their tank. They're nervous of your Panzer. You got to be very careful of that. You also want to bring light AT. There isn't much light AT in this deck, but in general, like 5th Panzer and some other decks, you get really good light AT, especially like Pack 36s or anything, or like the Russians, they don't get as much light AT. I mean, they do. I guess they do. Some of them really do. But you want to bring light AT for all the armor car spam. There is such a huge number of armor cars in this game from these really good decks that you really need to bring light AT to make up the difference. Because light AT will just destroy all these armor cars coming down your road. Bring a lot of them. Beware of them. There's also different types of AT. You have your Pack 40s. You also have assault gun versions. The Russians have a little more. They have 2 versions of the Zis gun. They have like artillery piece / AT gun and Zis gun, and they have just straight up AT gun. And they're pretty cost efficient. Rely on your ATs. AT guns are so cost efficient. They're cheap and they can lay out a lot of pain on people. There's also a whole bunch of anti-tank vehicles. For the Germans, get Martyrs. These have huge these are must takes, guys. Must takes. The Russians get their SC like 76s. I don't know. Maybe it's some, they get their own equivalency of it with the 135 penetration with the APCR round. Those things are really good. Those are must takes as well. You really want to look in the anti-tank tab. This is where you should kind of beginning building your tab. And you just have to experiment, like what works. Like this, for example, this vehicle, it's a Pack 40, but it's terrible. It's so bad. And I've never really seen it be used effectively. So like you just have to experiment a little bit, kind of figure it out. But yeah, AT. Oh, and you also can bring heavy AT, but this should be brought out selectively. This should be a problem solver, not a like proactive bring this out, because this is a bomb target ready to happen. 100 points. Someone's gonna buy a 100-point aircraft and bomb it and get their money back instantly. So just be careful of that. And that's the same with the Russian ATs and everything else. Anti-air. Okay, what do I say here? The Germans have a clear advantage here. Allies have a disadvantage. Don't over rely on AA. Use fighters. It's more cost efficient and less risky, I believe. But if you have to, I really recommend bringing out the stuff that for sure kills. And if you're playing the Russians, for example, you get the Flak 37s. They're really bad, but vetting them is what's going to effectively make them killing machines. So this is not a great example, but like the Russians, for example, I'd one vet. If I had two of the equivalency of these with the Russian side, I'd one vet them and then A and B and bring out a total of 6 of them, which is 2 and then 4. I think it's really worth it, and especially if you pair a leader next to them or double vet, maybe even a commander nearby at triple vet. So that really makes them killing machines. Also, the Russians and the Axis, they get the Axis gets the 88. The Russians get the 85. These things are killing machines because they can kill both aircraft and tanks. Be careful though; they can get easily overwhelmed by enough aircraft, especially enough fighters and Typhoons. So you need to have some of the real lighter AA around here to kind of support them, or you need multiple of these 88s up, or they can die. They're also pretty expensive, 120 points. So don't be too reckless with them. But I do recommend not overwhelming your AA. You do not want to spam this out max. You want to be pretty light. You want to bring what's necessary. And that's my opinion on the topic. Artillery-wise, all heavy artillery, do not bring in your 1v1 decks. I don't think they're useful whatsoever. The only exceptions to the rule, I believe, are 100 mils. Because they're so precise on their shots. Mortars are totally worth it. You should totally bring mortars. Rockets, I also believe, are worth it for the Axis. For the Axis, Warfremens, Nebel Warfares. I think those are really cost efficient. These things are awesome to destroy tanks. And look at their stats, test them. And then the Russians equivalencies, they get the Antrushas, Katyushas, and a couple other things. Katyushas are more for suppressing than pushing up after, and Trushas are there for killing tanks and anything you look at. So those are really worth it. Some of the rockets worth it. Like 150 is not worth it. Mortars really worth it. If you can bring mortar half tracks, the Americans get this, and a lot of German decks get these. They have corrected shot, meaning that when they're in radio range, which most leaders carry radios, and you'll see when you click on an artillery unit, they will do precision shots and just annihilate whatever they look at. The best thing too to bring is 81mm mortars. If you have no real artillery in your deck, you have no rockets, nothing's cool in it, then bring the 81mm mortar. These things are really cost efficient, don't take up too much ammo, and they carry smoke rounds, which smoke is always key. Off map wise, I believe off map should either come in A and B. Why? In A, you can really dominate an area or choke point that you want to just immediately win and just win the area, or B phase, because that's when usually the blobs start showing up and they can really clear out an area. But that's just me. Air wise, now this is interesting. If you can, bring clusters in A whenever you can. A and B. That's my opinion. Fighters, try to bring them in A, and I recommend bringing a fighter bomber in A and some fighter bombers in B as well. And I don't recommend bringing too many fighters. If you can, use your fighter bombers to support the fighters. So like, for example, I have BF-109 G2s here, but instead of getting more fighters like the MB-410, I will use the other BF-109 bombers to do the job to support them. But yeah, fighters are a must take in a 1v1. They're just an absolute necessity. I don't recommend buying high altitude bombers. There's a few exceptions to that. Like 7th Mech gets those PE2, I think PE2 bombers. I think that's what they're called, and they're high altitude bombers, and they're like precision missiles. So they're great. They're awesome. Defense wise, fill it in. And now we get to the Recon. Okay, so Recon has a few varieties here. Oh, wait, I forgot to say. We got to go back to air tab. Also, there are anti-tank planes such as IL-2, G2 for the Axis, and IL-2 for the Axis. Sorry, allies. Rocket planes. Those are must take. But if you can only get one in A, I do recommend bringing them in B. But if you have to, and you think this is a moment where I really need it, put it in your A tab. And it's really up to you though. But yeah, recon planes can be really useful too. I see a lot of people sometimes scout with them, or be really mean, send out the recon plane and then bomb on the opening, which is really cheesy. You can also bring napalm planes. I don't recommend bringing them though, unless you're going to do the napalm opening, which is to napalm a road, and then when units have to go through it, they die. So they either have to stop their entire column and wait for the napalm to dissipate, or they have to go around it, which is going to delay them even. It's going to delay them no matter what, and they're going to be screwed getting into position. So other than that, I don't bring them though, because they're too expensive to do the damage that they need to do. So that's just my opinion on the napalm. Recon wise, you get your normal recon stuff. You should look at why you should bring it. You should never bring recon just to have recon look. Like if you really want somebody to check out what's over the ridge, just send an Urza. It's 15 points and they can get something more important. So for example, I bring Panzer 3s here, which are just, a really good vehicle. But you can also bring them in armor cars. This deck doesn't get armor cars, but you can look in the display of all transports. A lot of them get like, 20 millimeter cannons and stuff. You get Panthers in here. You get snipers. Snipers are really strong in this game. Those destroy enemy troops. So I really recommend bringing a recon, and I definitely recommend bringing snipers and anything with bazookas. If it has a bazooka, that is like 101. A lot of the Russian deck get the Revzeka, I think that's how you say it, and they are just must takes. They destroy everything. Actually, let's go look at just like a Russian example, just to show. Just want to quickly look at a Russian example. So see how I one vet this? I think that's what you should do, is one vet these. In fact, maybe I should even one vet these guys as well. Actually, I'm doing that right now. Isn't that sad? What was I saying? Anyway, so that's what I do with these two AA guns. I was talking about the bazooka units. These guys carry bazookas or Revzeka. These are must takes. You can even get some more T-34s if you wanted to. I do recommend that. You see how I one vet all my tanks to bring leaders? This is super key. Vetting up tanks, really important. You want to bring a good variety of infantry too. You see I bring Tensaniki, Superi, just a good variety of different stuff here. Well, this is a mistake too, but we'll have to fix that. Half track wise, this is my opinion about half tracks. I am on the fence here. Everyone's like, when should I bring half tracks? And what do you want? I believe adamantly, but with few exceptions, you should not bring half tracks in A. Why? Because I think getting into position is more important. There's few exceptions. For example, third armor, you need to rely on your half tracks because you get no real amount of infantry. So all those 50 cal OP half tracks are what you should bring. Also, Tensaniki is an exception. For example, you can bring the Tensaniki in this deck with half tracks, which is actually not a bad move at all. It does increase the price a lot, but it's pretty worth it actually. Other than that too, I try to vet all my infantry. You should try to bring tools that you think are necessary. And these are the PE2s I was talking about. These are like high altitude bombers, but they freaking are missiles. They're precision shot. I don't know what's wrong with them, but they're crazy. Bring plenty of fighters. Bring A and B. This is what your kind of deck should look like. It should look balanced. You should kind of shift the deck more of what you're doing. Like for example, I'm Maverick, so I have a pretty heavy focus on A and B, but I'm really still trying to get that initiative in A. I hope this is a little bit of a guide, guys. A little bit. I just want to talk. We can go on forever. There's so much content here about how to make a deck. I'm gonna leave my 7th Mech in the description and also my 20th Panzer. I think those are two really strong decks that are really fun to play. I don't think they're so overpowered. I think 20th is overpowered. I think 7th Mech is a really strong deck. I think 20th is a really strong deck too, to kind of learn, be good at the game. Anyway, guys, leave a like, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys around.